Good afternoon. I'm always the cleanup batter here, and I'm delighted at the end of a good long afternoon. Was that my cue? I'm here to talk about the rousing subject of contracts, county contracts. I do have a contract, a form contract that's being passed out to you that I would like you to take a look at. We're going to talk about, I still can't get over the fact that Maggie's working for Fox. You know, Sarah Palin hasn't been gone that long now. I'm still trying to get over that. Maybe Jackie will do us a poem. County contracts, it may not sound like an exciting topic, but it's an important one. It's even critical, talking about county contracts. You heard our county commission chair mention that as one of the issues that the new commission will have to address, and that is working our way out of the hole that was dug by the prior commission and the commission before that with county contracts. County contracts involve money, planning, growth, quality of life. Just about every vital issue in local government is covered by county contracts. And we have a problem here in Martin County. We have not been responsible in crafting, in negotiating, or in entering into contracts in the past, and we are now beginning to suffer some of the consequences. Most of us aren't even aware of many of the county contracts that affect our taxes, our government policies, our environment, our economic development, our recreational facilities, the very nature of our community. Most of the underpinnings of local government are contractual. We have a contract with our county administrator. We have a contract with our county attorney. We have contracts with vendors who provide goods and services to operate the county. We have contracts with various agencies. We have contracts to obtain grants and other funding for county projects. We have leases that determines who uses county facilities and properties and who doesn't. The major problems with county contracts that we have inherited from the prior commission are they're too long, they're too costly, they're poorly negotiated, they're poorly drafted, and they're rarely enforced. Some of the contracts that have been entered into in the past decade bind the county for years and years to come. We have the ability to change or to terminate many of these contracts only at considerable expense. Grant contracts, for instance, provide money for things like airport projects, but they contain restrictions that can require repayment of millions of dollars if we fail to honor them. This has seriously impaired our ability to retain control over many of our projects, and especially at our local airport. Other contracts obligate the county to pay far more for things than any private purchaser would ever pay. An example of that is the Rio Mobile Village purchase agreement that is currently pending, was entered into late last year, as well as many other property purchase contracts which obligate the county to pay considerably more than the fair market value of what property is worth on the open market. The commission decided not to enter into a contract to pay $6 million for a building near the courthouse in Stewart after Commissioner Fielding, are you still here, Ed? After Commissioner Fielding pointed out that the property was purchased just a few months earlier for $3 million. Even after that startling disclosure, county staff and Commissioner Smith continued to advocate for that $6 million deal. Fortunately, the majority of the commission did not go along with that. There are long-term contracts that bind us to bad deals, including my favorite, the Business Development Board contract that was approved by the old commission majority in 2009. The BDB contract is a poster child for bad county contracts on so many levels. But the length of the term is one of the most egregious. It's a 10-year contract with automatic 10-year renewals in perpetuity. 10 after 10 after 10 after 10. So actually take a look if any of you have the little contract that I passed out, and this is on the same lines as the BDB contract. Here's what it says. You are going to pay me $625,000 a year with an automatic increase of 3% each year, regardless of the economy or anything else. $625,000 a year. You're going to pay me every year, 3% increase every year. And in return for that, I'm going to do some stuff for you, if I feel like it. I'm going to decide what I'm going to do and when I'm going to do it, and if it doesn't work, oh well, you still pay me that $625,000 or more each year. And we're going to do this for 10 years. And unless you tell me a year and a half before the end of the first 10 years, it's going to automatically renew for 10 years, and 10 years, and 10 years after that, forever. Now, if I'm not happy with the contract and I want to cancel it, I just tell you, I want out, and 3 months later, we're done. Now, if you're not happy with the way things are going, you have to give me a year's notice, and you keep paying that $625,000 a year, and I get a year to try to fix it. And at the end of that year, if you're still not happy, I get another 18 months before the contract is over. And you keep paying that $625,000 a year. And I don't have to tell you what I'm doing. And if you ask me, I tell you it's none of your business. The contract will be binding on all of us, and it'll be binding on you and whoever takes your place if you're not here anymore. How many of you would sign that contract? You belong on the old county commission, because that's what they did in 2009. And that's not that far off, and frankly, if anybody wants to see the BDB contract, I do have copies with me, which I'm perfectly happy to pass out. It's not the most exciting reading, and it's not very specific. Anyhow, commissioners' terms, are for 4 years, but the prior majority routinely entered into contracts that would outlast those terms, including an unprecedented 7-year contract for the county administrator. Contract enforcement is almost non-existent in the county, even those contracts which provide minimal protections for county property, county residents, and our tax obligations. They are virtually ignored once the contracts are signed. There's $1 a year use agreement that the county entered into with the Jensen Beach Chamber of Commerce, for instance, for the old library building. That contract restricts the use of that building by the chamber to a small area. The chamber has taken over the whole building and has not allowed anybody else to use it. There was a veterans group a few years ago that wanted to meet in part of that building once a month. Chamber said no. And when the veterans group went to the county administrator said, why don't you ask around and see if any of the churches in the area will let you use their property. I will say that the Sewell's Point Town Hall made itself available and opened up its doors to the veterans group. The Conservation Alliance and other groups pay more for the use of this room for half an hour than some of these organizations like the Maritime Museum pays to use almost the entire first floor of the Langford building out at Indian Riverside Park for a year, thanks to a lease approved by the commission when Doug Smith was both a county commissioner and the chairman of the Maritime Museum. Commissioner Smith also spent more than $100,000 in his district funds, which is the taxes collected by from residents who live in his district, to upgrade the premises for the museum. At the same time, those premises were taken out of the county's inventory of revenue-generating premises. That was a very popular meeting room that would be rented out and hired by organizations, no longer available in exchange for that $1 a year lease, which is a 10-year lease. In many cases, the county uses templates. These are form contracts that county attorneys just cut and paste various provisions in. These templates are very poorly drafted, and they're subject to different interpretations when you have different types of contracts and different types of organizations. I recently negotiated a purchase agreement with the county for a client who is selling some land for a public stormwater treatment project. I insisted on revisions to that standard language, which is now being debated in connection with the Rio Mobile Village purchase. When outside counsel hired by the county to handle the Rio Mobile Village purchase was asked, "What does this language mean?" His answer was, "Well, it's the county's standard contract language." Not a good answer. The language is still vague and may well create problems in the future. Disputes over the language in county contracts can end up in court, making poorly drafted contracts even more costly. As we all know, a complaint was filed against Martin County and the South Florida Water Management District over contracts for the Lake Point project that are almost unintelligible. Our own Maggie was slapped with a lawsuit filed shortly after the lawsuit was filed against the county by the Lake Point folks. And they complained that she communicated with her county commissioners about the problems with the contracts, as well as environmental problems related to the rock mining project. And just as an aside, for those of you who don't know what a SLAP suit is, it's an acronym for Strategic Litigation Against Public Participation, SLAP. These are lawsuits designed to silence critics about matters of public interest. Usually a development project like Lake Point or Pitchford's Landing in Jensen Beach or the Publix on Hutchinson Island. All of these were subjects of SLAP suits. But let's go back to the Business Development Board contract just for a minute. It really doesn't take a lawyer to read the contract and conclude that there is almost nothing in that contract that benefits Martin County. The contract increased the BDB's annual take from county taxpayers from around $300,000 a year to $625,000 a year in the first year, with the built-in 3% increase every year during the term of the contract. And I say it's around $300,000 in the past because in the past, the BDB received Martin County's share of what we used to call the occupational license fee, which we now call the local business tax. And that would range anywhere from about $240,000 to maybe as much as $320,000 or $325,000 a year. In the new contract, the county is obligated to pay the BDB $625,000 a year, even though those local business tax receipts are still well below $300,000 for the most part. There are a lot of other problems with the BDB contract, and it would cost more money to rent this room for another hour or so to go into them. But one of the most onerous is the termination clause. The contract allows the BDB to terminate the contract for any reason with 90 days notice. They just send a letter to the county saying, we want out, 90 days later, you're out. But if the county wants to terminate the contract, the county has to give the BDB written notice of any default or any failure to perform, and the BDB gets 12 months to fix the problem, to cure it. Now, if the problem isn't fixed at the end of 12 months, the county can then terminate the contract with 18 months' notice. So 30 months, the county is obligated to continue to pay that $625 or $650 or $675 or $700,000 a year for a contract that isn't working. Who would negotiate a contract like that? Who would agree to a contract like that? This is a continuing problem with county contracts. They're prepared many times by the vendor. In this case, the BDB's attorney prepared it. Or they're poorly drafted templates, like the land purchase agreement for the Rio Mobile Village purchase. They are not given thorough and responsible review by the county attorney's office or by the commission. The county's obligations under the BDB contract are to pay the BDB more than $650,000 a year now in taxes that would otherwise be available for other county projects and other county operations. The BDB's obligations are to oversee and implement a comprehensive economic development strategy through advertising, promotional activities, and other sales and marketing techniques. That's it. There's no goals, there's no standards, there's no requirements that the BDB has to meet. They just have to do some advertising. That's it. Who would negotiate a contract like that? Who would sign a contract like that? Those contracts are being negotiated and signed, and you're paying for them, and I'm paying for them. County taxpayers so far have paid more than $2.5 million since that BDB contract was negotiated in 2009. And over the first-year term, county taxpayers will pay more than $8 million if that contract isn't modified. The BDB hasn't, in fact, done the one thing they're obligated to do, which is to implement a comprehensive economic development strategy for Martin County. That hasn't been done since 2008, when there was something called the Roadmap to Martin County's Future that was designed and implemented by the BDB, but that's long expired and no new plan has been developed. So the $625,000, $650,000 that we pay is just going into a big old hole, and we're not seeing the results. Again, the BDB is a separate topic for a separate forum, but it is the poster child for costly, ineffective, and largely unenforced county contracts. There are others that deserve and hopefully will receive the attention of our new county attorney, Mike Durham, and our new county commission majority. But these contracts also deserve the attention of citizens and residents who ultimately pay the price for bad county contracts and reap the benefits of good ones. So as Maggie says, stay involved, stick around, help our new commission majority make Martin County remain the best place in Florida. Thank you.